Welcome to this forum for candidates for State Senate in the 25th Legislative District. I'm Liz Kernitz-Thurlow, the moderator, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and all of our co-sponsors, I welcome all to this virtual forum. And I'd like to thank all those involved in putting these forums together. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission for the past 100 years has been to encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government, hence candidates forums. The League does not and has never endorsed candidates or political parties. We do take positions on issues after members study an agreement. Any person at least 16 years of age may become a member of the League. Today's forum, as I said, is for primary candidates for Legislative District 25 Senate. The primary election is Tuesday, August 4th, after which the top two vote getters will move on to the ballot for the general election. And that is why it's important to vote in primary elections. There are three candidates for this seat. In ballot order, they are Emmett Smith, Julie Dorr, and Chris Gildon. Welcome all of you. We're thrilled that you were able to participate. It's so nice to have all the candidates here. Thank you. Our timekeeper is Terry Baker from the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. She will hold up cards to let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining, 15, and when it's time to stop. There's also a 1-minute card that I forgot to say. When you see the stop card, you may finish a short sentence. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. These will be given in ballot order. After that, the order of answering questions will rotate. All candidates will be asked all of the same questions, and all of the questions are applicable to all candidates. At the end, closing statements may be up to 1 minute. So, your opening statement, please, Emmett Smith.
Well, my name is Emmett, and I am a 22-year resident, might be 24-year if you ask my wife, resident of the South Hill in Puyallup area. I've lived out here and I like living here very much. I've been involved with my neighborhood. I've been involved with the schools in the area as a substitute teacher and a full-time teacher, working in some of the different school districts. I'm also a licensed lawyer in the state of Washington, and I'm an MBA financial and economic analyst. So I have that background. I have a very broad educational background. I have my law degree from Seattle University, my English as a second language degree from, let's see, it's from the Washington Academy of Languages and Seattle Pacific University. I have my MBA from Texas Tech University and my BA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Warwick University, Coventry, England. So what I've been doing out here is I have had a very varied life. I put myself through law school by being a commercial fisherman, a boat owner in the state of Washington, and also a commercial fisherman in Alaska. That's how I originally got here. I was drilling oil wells down in West Texas before I came here. And I came here to get into the different environment and also to see Alaska. And when I came to this area, I liked it very much and ended up going to school here. The area of law that I have practiced quite a bit is I've practiced quite a bit of financial and bankruptcy law, and also a great deal of school law and business law. Financially and economics wise, I do a lot of credit counseling for people in trouble, especially to Chapter 13 debt reorganizations and Chapter 7s. I can say, unequivocally that I enjoy my life here. I've had a very good time here. I enjoy the people. I love it here. And I love what's going on here. And I think that I am prepared with my years of education and working experience. I've worked for the major corporations in the world, including China National Petroleum for 7 years.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Julie Dorr. You're muted there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and all the sponsors for hosting this forum tonight. Greatly appreciated. My name is Julie Dorr, and I'm running to represent the 25th Legislative District in the Washington State Senate. It's a great honor to be a candidate here in the district where I was born and raised. It's a district that's given so much to me and my family. My dad was a Boilermaker at Tacoma Boat. My mom, a proud union office manager. Excuse me. And today, my husband and I have a small business here in Puyallup. We have 2 children and a giant St. Bernard. My daughter attends Pierce College and my son will be a senior at Emerald Ridge next year. I hope that the sense of community that we share here means as much to my family as it did to my parents, as it does to me and to my children when they decide to start their own families. And I hope that they'll raise them here. As a Puyallup City Council member and now Mayor of Puyallup, I've worked really hard for what I believe in. I believe that homelessness and housing affordability are huge issues that must be solved with compassion and humanity. I believe our mental health system is broken and that our children need an education that provides the best possible start to their lives. This next legislative session will be one of the toughest as we recover from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and work on the needed reforms that will make our world a safer and more just place for everyone. I've worked really hard at the council. Have proven leadership, and I think it's now time to bring this leadership to the Senate. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this and for everyone who's out there watching it. I am Chris Gildon. I'm your current representative to the 25th Legislative District. I was elected just in 2018, and I've got to say that it has been an absolute honor serving each and every one of you. My background is I was an Army officer. I was in the military for 23 years. I have 5 deployments overseas, including twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. I had the opportunity to lead some really interesting programs kind of outside of the military that I think have served me very well in the legislature here. One of them was, actually I ran the peace program in Afghanistan. My job was to go out and facilitate negotiations with insurgents and figure out how to bring peace and healing to individual communities. I think that's a very appropriate skill given the political divisiveness of our society these days. And that's one of my goals, is to bring political healing. Another one of my jobs is I ran the sexual harassment assault response and prevention program on Fort Lewis. It's very important. See, I retired in 2016. I do commercial real estate now. I've been married to Autumn for 27 years. And I am endorsed by every previous state senator for the last 15 years, Republican and Democrat alike. I am endorsed by the Tacoma News Tribune, and I certainly hope to earn your endorsement here tonight. Again, I'm Chris Gildon, and it is an absolute honor serving you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now we come to questions. Because some information is always the same, the first candidate to answer will have up to 2 minutes. Each other will have 1 minute and is asked to add information or commentary or agree or disagree or whatever. The forum will last up to 90 minutes, so we're going to get to lots of questions. Those viewing this in real time may text questions to 206-306-4989. And questions must be applicable to all candidates. To view this or any of the other forums we've done this season, visit our website, www.tacoma-piercelwv.org/2020 If you are viewing this on our website, do not text questions, it's too late. Forums are also viewable at vote411.org. For now, the order of answering will rotate with each question. So for question 1, Julie Dorr will answer first and therefore has up to 2 minutes, followed by Chris Gildon and then Emmett Smith, each of whom will have up to 1 minute. Let's start with current concerns, COVID-19. The economy, as well as the health and lifestyles of all of us, has taken a huge hit. What are your proposals for making up the lost revenue and/or dealing with less revenue? Julie Dorr.
Okay, so we know that COVID-19 is going to lead to a large recession and high unemployment. It's been devastating to see the impacts on our small businesses. Some of them are shutting down, workers losing their jobs. And I've seen this every day at the city and has done my best wherever I can to, but the truth of the matter, this pandemic is going to see some devastating outcomes on our economy. I can't say what the fallout of this pandemic is going to do on our communities for certain, but I do know that the next legislative session is going to be filled with difficult decisions that need to be made in order to rebuild our state's economy. I want to focus our economy by supporting our small businesses and invest in infrastructure that creates jobs, attracts businesses, and we must do more to aid our frontline workers and those who've lost their jobs during this crisis. In the coming days, tough choices are going to have to be made, but my district can trust that I will fight for the workers in our community, not big corporations or special interests.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, and what she said is correct, and I'll be very brief because I've only got 1 minute. But budget forecast right now says that we have about an $8.5 billion deficit that we have to make up in the next biennium. $4.5 billion of that we have to make up in the next year. That's a huge percentage of our budget. Now we can reach a little bit of that by tapping into the state's rainy day fund, but we certainly will have some difficult decisions to make, and we need to support these businesses who are struggling today. These businesses have had their doors shuttered. Patronage has been reduced widely, and certainly have to support these businesses as well as the workers who have been so heavily affected. I know my office is working with dozens and dozens of people who are trying to get their unemployment benefits rectified these days, and so that's going to be a lot of my focus.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
Well, I'd like to say that so far, I think everybody's covered it very well. I think that it's very important that everybody understands that there's a two-step process in getting money into the state right now. The first step is that we need to make sure that we're getting the federal money that we're asking for right now in Washington, D.C., that the federal money comes into the states, the program that they're putting together right now in Washington, D.C. That money must come into the states because unfortunately, the state itself is very limited in the amount of and areas that it can raise revenue. It has fees, licensing, and certain taxes, all of which are limited. The budget forecast, as been said, is going to be, it's going to be worse than we realize. One of the things that I have done already, if you've read the voters pamphlet, you will see that I am also advocating that a complete $2,000 a month per person, per adult, regardless of income in the United States, and that this is given to every person to make sure that the recovery continues and that the recovery is equitable and not just a stock market recovery that goes to a very wealthy part of our country.
Thank you. Okay, question 2. Did someone say something that I needed to hear? No, me, okay. Question 2, Chris Gildon will answer first. Even without the current economic problems, our tax structure is the most regressive in the country. Washingtonians with little money pay a huge percentage in taxes. Our wealthier residents pay a lot less. Do you see ways of making this more equitable, and what would you propose or support?
You know, that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. We do have a regressive tax structure in the state, and it's something that we should fix. And I'm absolutely open to revamping our tax structure. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. Number one is the gas tax. We have one of the highest gas taxes in the nation, and that is absolutely a regressive tax. Other one is the real estate excise tax. You know, just this last biennium, the legislature voted to kind of revamp and make a tiered system of the real estate excise taxes in an attempt to reduce the tax burden on those lower incomes. But what they did, we always have to consider the second and third order effects of the policy, because what we did whenever we revamped this tax structure is we doubled it at those properties that sell at like the $2 million mark and above. And the intent was to try to let the wealthy pay more in taxes, those people who buy the McMansions, so to speak. But I do commercial real estate in my day job, and whenever you analyze it, which properties actually sell, what are the preponderance of properties that sell at the 2 million and above mark, you're going to find out that it's your apartment complexes, it's your multifamily housing units. And so by trying to reduce a couple of tenths of a % of tax for the low income people, what you actually did is you increased rent for all of the low-income people who are just trying to get their start in an apartment complex or maybe renting a duplex. And so I think it's incumbent on us to always consider the secondary and the tertiary effects of policy that it has.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone for all of the good answers. I think they've covered most of the issues on the regressive tax structure of the state of Washington, especially the gas taxes. Also the attempt by the state of Washington to raise money through property taxes. There's a couple of things I think that really need to be remembered here, that the emphasis on the sales tax really does hurt the low income worker in the state. And I just don't think it is fair the way it is set up at times, and I would work to change that. There are a few things that I think that are very important in any new tax that we bring out. And I know this is very general, but this is very important. I feel very strongly that everyone, regardless of income level, must contribute. And what I mean is that I have no problem paying whatever taxes are necessary to pay. I have no problem with people wealthier than I am paying taxes, more taxes than I pay. But I'm also of the opinion that even if you make less money, you should be contributing, even if it's $5 or $10 a year. Because one of the things that I learned that when I was in business.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. Well, I agree with both the gentleman on the panel. We do have one of the most regressive tax systems in the country. And I do support progressive tax reforms to ensure that low-income families aren't paying double the effective tax rate than the highest earners in the state. We all need to pay our fair share. I absolutely agree with that. We need to pay our fair share and strengthen our local communities, and we need to be able to help them recover from this pandemic.
Thank you. Okay, Emmett Smith will answer first. Speaking of people with less income, we have a huge crisis in the lack of affordable housing. What can and should the state do to help improve this situation? What would you propose or support?
I would propose a housing program funded and administered by the state government to determine where housing can be developed in the state. Now, I have to take you back a little bit. I can recall all of the discussions over the environmental things that we had in this state, especially when we went into land use in the state. And I think we have to look very closely at our regulations at the moment and changing our suburban areas out of single family housing if we can, and focus more on housing that's more community wide, maybe perhaps even smaller houses, but houses that apartment type buildings also, because what you get with this is the one thing that is a secondary part of housing, and that's transportation. Living out here on the South Hill, there are many people who would love to use the bus system, but they cannot because buses come once every hour. There simply aren't enough people here to justify having those types of services. Housing can be used to increase the density, which will increase the need for public transportation. And I think that this is something that's very important for the entire area of Puget Sound. As for housing itself, I think we have to look at the tax structure, what people are paying for housing as far as taxes goes, and should our main taxes for the area be property taxes, or should they come from some other area? I think we have to look into the regulations that we put on homeowners for taxes also. We have many different regulations, such as sprinkler system regulations, regulations for garbage, all these other different things that we need to look at very closely to see if we can find some economies in here to help the average person out in his housing. But for housing itself, we have to find a way to fund it, find a place to put it, and bring along all of the structure that goes along with it.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Okay, so yes, we absolutely have an affordable housing crisis. One of the things that we did in the city was take advantage of the program provided by the legislature for and adopted the provisions under 1406, which allows the local municipalities to keep a portion of the sales tax revenue already being collected. It is not a tax increase. It allows us to take those funds and put them into affordable housing. We have, I agree with you on, I think Kevin, we had that conversation the last time we met on Zoom. We are putting houses in places, housing and multifamily units near transit, in walkable communities and near public transit, which will decrease the need for them to be on using vehicles, decrease the need on the gas taxes that we're talking about. There are a lot of different things. And in Puyallup, we put in ADUs, and I'm stopped.
Okay, thank you. I would have let a few words go by.
That's okay, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so we are about 320,000 units short of housing in Washington State. It's a supply problem. We have had some success in the last legislative session. We allocated about $159 million towards affordable housing help. We passed legislation that would allow additional mother-in-law type units to be constructed in some areas. But whenever we talk to developers, the people who build housing, and I ask them, and I always do, what are the drivers of the cost of housing? They always tell me there's a couple of items that are pretty set that we can't really touch. Land, labor, and lumber, we really can't touch those much. The next bit goes into the cost of holding, which is tied to permitting timelines and regulations. I've only got a few seconds left. That contributes about 25% of the cost of housing. So whenever you consider a $400,000 home, about 100,000 of that is due to regulation and permitting. So.
Thank you. And moving to people with even less income, we have a large homeless population living in cars, shelters, and on the streets. What should be the role of the state legislature in trying to solve this? And what will your role be? Julie Doris first.
Sorry, am I unmuted? Yes.
No.
Okay, so I think we need to take a two-pronged approach to homelessness. First, we need to expand mental health resources across the district, and that's something I've been a strong advocate for. We've been dealing with homelessness issues since I came on council, and I have been to the camps. I've been out with our community outreach officer. I've been to drug court. I've been to community court. Went to Recovery Cafe. I've studied this extensively. And the things that we find mental health issues, find opioid addiction, and we find a lack of affordability. So the state needs to take the lead on these things. The state stopped investing in mental health in 2008, and we're seeing that on our with our people without homes. The state you cannot have this problem be solved jurisdiction by jurisdiction. If Fife does something, it affects Puyallup. If Puyallup does something, it affects Sumner. This needs to be a regional issue, and it needs to be elevated to a state level to take leadership on this if we want to be successful.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, great. Yeah, so she mentioned a lot of it already, right? And then I spoke about a little bit of it with the regulation and the drivers of the cost of housing a minute ago, as well as our housing shortage. But whenever we get to it, it's all about root causes, right? It's what are the root causes? Whenever we talk about we have to fix homelessness, I'll submit to you that homelessness is an outcome of a bunch of other root cause issues that we really need to get a handle on. And those root cause issues are our lack of capacity to care for the mentally ill, our lack of capacity to provide drug treatment, our housing shortage. Maybe it's due to a shortage of living wage jobs in a particular area. But these are the things that we need to get after, those root causes that drive people to homelessness.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
So I think that we've covered very well in here tonight the causes. the mental health system, addiction, the drugs that are pushing it. One of the things that I really think needs to be emphasized a great deal is that we need to be focused on getting the homeless off the street right away. And this really has a lot to say about the very weak and unstable social security net that we have in this country. Also, the way that our families are structured, that people move wherever the jobs are, and they don't have the social ties that they used to have. This is an area that is becoming even more of an issue. People simply don't have anyone beyond the people they're getting their paycheck from. So they have nothing to fall back on, nothing to believe in. I have had people come to me, workers, and simply say to me, you know, a year ago, I lost my job and I was out on the street in Seattle also. And I've spent a great deal of time with these guys on the street. I've had assignments working with them at night in homeless shelters. And I feel very strongly that we need to give them housing, get the social structure back up and established for them where they are treated as people of this community.
Thank you. All right. All of you have talked about the causes and the problems, and you're all pretty much in agreement. But what none of you has actually done is answer what should the role of the state legislature be and what will your role be? So you're getting 30 seconds more each, starting with Julie Dorr.
Okay, so the role of the state is to increase affordable housing units. It is to expand mental health services, and it is to deal with the opioid crisis. I've been on the opioid task force, and there is a huge need there. And until you address that issue, you will have, homelessness is a symptom of these three things. The state needs to deal with those three things.
Thank you. You only have 30 seconds, so that 30-second sign must have been it. Chris Gildon.
Great, I appreciate the additional time. So I think part of the job of a leader is properly allocating scarce resources for maximum effect. And one of the things that we have to do in Olympia is we have to properly align our budget with our state priorities. Back in 2019, the legislature increased spending $900 million for something we're really good at, and only $300 million for one of our biggest problems, which is homelessness. I think those priorities need to be reversed and aligned in accordance with our problems.
Thank you. Emmett Smith. You're muted. You're muted. Unmute.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I believe that the state's role is to provide affordable housing, to expand the mental health system, and to also look at addiction and other of the root causes of homelessness. I will work to see that the funding is there, that funding for more affordable housing and mental health services, and also especially with the addiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, staying with pretty much the same topic, and Chris Gildon is first. Would you rather switch to 90 seconds for each candidate than the 2 minutes and 1 minute? Quick vote for everybody, yes or no?
This format is fine, I think.
Okay. All right, we'll stick with it. But we are changing for the autumn ones, just so you know. Chris Gildon. There are many reasons that people are homeless. Mental health issues are one, as you've all pointed out. How do you want to see the state deal with getting help and treatment for those with mental health issues? And how can our treatment and care systems be improved?
So it's a wide-ranging question. If I understand it better, how can we do better at serving those who are in need of our services, right?
Yes.
So a number of issues. Like I said, I covered it a moment ago. We increased spending $900 million in 2019 for something that we're like number 2 or number 3 at the nation, and only $300 million for what is probably our biggest problem that we had at the time, which is mental illness and drug addiction. Last session, we did a really good job, and we budgeted for counselors for each school district. So each school can have a mental health counselor, and kind of, I think mental health starts, if we can catch these signs and symptoms whenever the children are younger. Hopefully we can prevent it from becoming a crisis as they get older. But bottom line is, we have a lack of capacity of facilities to provide for the mentally ill. We have a lack of capacity for counselors, professionals, to provide that counseling treatment. One of the things that we really tried to work on was license portability, so that we could get professionally trained counselors and therapists to come to Washington State, because we simply do not have the people or the facilities to properly care for them. So it's going to take a while. This is not going to be easy to overcome, to fix overnight. But we need the people and the facilities in order to fix this particular problem.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
I could just second on this one that we have to have the access to health care, not only mental health care, but primary care. We have to have access to nutritional care, the access to counselors, medicines, social support systems. All of these things have to be done by the state. We have to raise the revenues and get the money here to provide this type of care. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Yes, thank you. So this is something that's really dear to my heart. Absolutely. So Puyallup had a suicide prevention seminar here a couple of years ago. Brought a gentleman, one of the only survivors that lived, went from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. The next day, the schools were overwhelmed. They had more kids reaching out for help than they could possibly handle, and it was a really sad thing. I think that we need mental health. We need coverage for mental health in our healthcare system. We need providers. I know of an individual that had 38 stitches in their arm and double coverage insurance, and they couldn't get in to see a health provider because they were not a danger to themselves. I would beg to differ. We need to do better. We need to have insurance coverage, and we need to encourage people going into that industry and pay them well to take care of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Emmett Smith will be first on this one. And putting together a question from the audience. A community member asks, how has your community involvement informed you on needs the legislature can address? And we'll see about adding my half to it. But as a state senator, how will you help to solve whatever this is?
Well, I think the overwhelming discussion that I have with people in this area is the transportation issue. The ability to get around in the 25th district. If you're living on what we call the South Hill area, once you are here on the weekend, you almost feel trapped. Getting home is very difficult. We have often had traffic backed up from Meridian Avenue all the way to Canyon, which is a little over 2 miles. If there's any type of accident or anything going on in there, we can be shut down entirely and we cannot move. It is also an issue because they're getting very frustrated with not being able to move around in their community. It is also an issue here of public safety. How fast can we move our police and our fire departments in the area that we've talked about several times with people here. Even this morning on my way to work, I was on Canyon going northbound when I suddenly realized that I had ambulance behind me and I couldn't even change lanes to let the ambulance go by me. We were moving along at 45 miles an hour. So transportation is one of the big issues. Another issue here is the environmental issue. The quality of the air, which is also related to the traffic. I would be involved very much in cleaning up the environment as much as we can through not only automobiles, but energy. Also, of course, people are always interested in school. In addition to being an attorney, I have held certificates to teach in the high schools here. And I understand that. I know how important a good education is. I always focus on education and think it's the most important thing that's going on in this district. And it is the most important thing, education and safety for their children in this district. These are the things we're talking about.
Oh, I didn't mean to, I thought you were done. You have another 15 seconds if you want it.
No, that's fine. I can wrap it up there. The other thing is the availability of healthcare facilities that they can easily get to.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. Can I repeat the question? I want to make sure I understood.
Yeah. How has your community involvement informed you on needs the legislature can address?
Okay, lots of things. So I serve on the South Sound 911 Board of Directors. I serve on as an ex officio to the Central Pierce Fire and Rescue, and those have given me significant opportunities through ride-alongs and being out with our first responders to see a lot of the different issues. And again, some of those go back into the homelessness. They come back into various other things. I do a lot of work with our seniors. I do a lot of work with kids. We are an aging in place community, but yet we're not investing in our seniors the way that we should. What else? I've been a big brother. I've been a big sister. A lot of the things that I am really passionate about are the things that are affecting our children. We cannot treat them all the same. They're not the same. There's not a cookie cutter answer. We need to be able to have education and opportunities for kids on various, from the kids that are on an IEP to the highly capable kids.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
So yeah, this is basically how do you stay in tune with the people that you represent, right? And I think I've done this in a number of ways. I'm a huge supporter of the service clubs of Puyallup. I'm a member of the Puyallup VFW. I support the nonprofits such as Amara, Rebuilding Hope, the Food Bank, and I work with the Chamber of Commerce to stay up on business needs. I've met with hundreds and hundreds of constituents over the course of the last couple of years. And, right now is obviously campaign season, and I'm out talking to the voters. Last time I went and I knocked on more than 13,500 doors to talk to people and ask them what issues keep them up at night. So whenever I got to Olympia, I didn't have to wonder how they felt about a particular bill. I knew because they had told me on their doorstep, and I plan to do the same thing this year.
Thank you. Reminder, if real-time viewers have questions, please text them to 206-306-4989. And one question just came in, and it's relevant because we've talked about the huge hole in the budget and how are we going to make it up. And you've all been talking about how we need more money for housing, for mental health, for drug services, and for everything else. So how are you going to balance the budget? What's going to get cut? And we are about to reverse order, but I'm going to start in the middle. So it'll be Julie Dorr, then Emmett Smith, then Chris Gildon.
So honestly, I don't have an answer of what's going to get cut. I think that we're going to have to look at everything. My personal priorities is not going to be on the backs of our working families. They've already paid enough. They've already paid enough to in this pandemic. We've had budget struggles at the city. We do things and already, first thing we did out of the gate was I talked to the city manager and said, okay, what are we going to stop right now? We cut our temporary workers, our seasonal workers. We did a hiring freeze. We have delayed some projects. All of those things are going to have to be considered in order to close the budget deficit.
Emmett Smith.
Okay. As for cuts, the first thing we have to look at is the size of state government and cut where we can, not only in administrations and agencies, but also in the number of employees that are working. Wherever we can get some extra funds would be very well used for other places. I'm not for putting any of this additional burden on the working families in the area. So size of government is important. Delaying some projects is also important. at this time, the budget shortfall that we are going to be looking at, we are going to have a lot of delayed projects coming on, and we have to focus for sure on public safety and education, because it's going to be just an incredible demand for different types of funding from different people. As for cuts, also then finally, I want to say that my Canadian friends tell me that the problem with American government is that it doesn't have enough money. And I think that's a very interesting assertion to make by Canadians, because they often say to me, you don't have the things that we have, a national health system. You don't have the things that we have, like excellent roads, excellent bridges. And 25, 30 years ago, you had so much more than we had. So I think we also have to look at getting the government more money and people start talking about it.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, so I appreciate a lot of what's already been said. You know, just as a matter of fact, our state budget in the last decade went up from $32.9 billion all the way up over a decade to $53.4 billion. That's a huge increase. Just over the last biennia, the legislature passed 13 new taxes. That's a total of a 20% increase in government spending just over the last 2 years. I wonder how many of your budgets have gone up that much in the last 2 years. I don't think many. So I think it's doable. We certainly can do it. We're going to have to make some difficult decisions, but you know, we can easily use part of the budget stabilization account to offset some of the loss. And we're also going to have to roll back some of the spending that we just increased recently.
Thank you. All right, so Chris Gildon is first this time. Do you support single-payer health care for all in Washington state? What would your preferred program look like, and how will you work to achieve this?
Wow, and I have 2 minutes to do all that?
Yeah, the others
No
only have
problem.
one, so go for it.
No problem. Single-payer health care. So, you know, the legislature basically codified the Affordable Care Act in the last couple of years. So even if the big DC, the other Washington, makes changes to it, it's actually codified into state law right now. So I don't think that there's any appetite to get rid of that in the legislature right now. And certainly for those who would have the appetite to do so, I seriously doubt that they would have any support, or at least not even sufficient support probably to get a committee hearing. You know, I don't particularly like that system. I much prefer a system that incorporates competition, because I think that competition breeds excellence. However, I just don't think that it's going to be an issue in the upcoming years of anyone trying to take that away. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. I think if anything, this global pandemic has shed a light on the healthcare crisis that we have. And healthcare is a human right. We just talked about a lot of other things here that we need to address, and mental health and opioid addictions. We need to make sure that everybody has insurance. We need to find ways on the local level for people to have affordable quality healthcare. I'm talking to healthcare officials throughout the district as mayor, and individuals, and they're really frightened. A lot of people have lost their healthcare. So we need to make sure that people have the resources that they need to keep our community safe. I do support a healthcare for all, what that program would look like. I can't say that it's Medicare for all, but it is. I do support a healthcare for all, and the state just passed I'm trying to think of what the name of the plan was. It was delayed, implemented. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I do support that plan. And I think that, I know that the governor had to veto, I think it was Cascade Care. I do support the Cascade Care plan, and yes, I do support healthcare for everyone.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
Well, first of all, you have to understand what the situation that we're in. We are the only industrialized country in the world that does not have some sort of government-sponsored or single-payer healthcare system. We are running our current healthcare system on decisions that were made right after the Second World War Almost everyone else has gone in a different direction, mainly because many of them could not afford anything else. But at the time, what has come up today, now that we have some different plans that we can look at, Australia has a well thought of private system that is both public and private. It is very well thought of by the Australians. It is solvent. Canada also has a system that is constantly being trying to cracked open by the private system, but the government system is working very well. The British system is also working very well. What you need to understand is that we are supposed to have a competitive system today, and we do not. We have a system that the costs that the private companies don't want to pay are pushed onto the government and socialized right now. When a worker loses his job, am I run out of time?
You're out of time. Can you not see the cards?
No, I cannot, but that's okay.
Oh. Huh. Can the others of you see the cards? Yeah. All right. Okay. Julie Doors first. Partisan gridlock keeps some things from being done. How would you work across the aisle to achieve goals? And what are the biggest issues on which you would try to reach compromise if necessary?
Well, that's what I do. I'm in a nonpartisan office right now. And I think that there is a place at the table for opposing viewpoints. That we all come at a situation with our own personal lens. I think that if we can come together with our values and what it is that we want to agree on for our state and our community, I don't think there's an issue where I wouldn't try to work across the aisle. We have to learn to not be so entrenched in our sides and be able to have conversations with each other. And some of these things will take smaller steps. You're not going to be able to do them overnight, but we're reestablishing those relationships, which is something that I have worked really hard on the council. I have did that with the school district, with the first responders. I was elected on an issue that was on a bipartisan issue. I worked with the Republicans to get that issue taken care of. I think that I do not see an issue where I would not be willing to work across the aisle. The best solutions are when we represent everybody.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
I think that really this starts off as a personal issue in your own civility, how you treat other people, in being honest, developing your own character, and often working with other people and letting them know that you're very honest, and also your own integrity. One of the things that I have learned is that through working with so many different people, I have learned that if I watch my words with people, and I am never in a situation where I speak badly of other people, that after a while people will say to me, you're the only person around here that we can trust. I said, well, I've learned a long time ago how to handle my words. And what would I work with my words across the line, especially taxes and funding, education issues, and the type of government that we want to have and what we want to accomplish with it. And I think you can do that the best when you present yourself as a person who's civil, honest, and has integrity.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, thank you. I mentioned earlier that I had a history of running the peace program in Afghanistan, and one of my goals is to heal the partisan divisions. And one of the things that I was really amazed with when I got to the legislature is that it's not Washington, D.C. We've done the analysis. I've taken the votes. I've studied it. We have about 60% of the votes in Olympia come out unanimous. Another 30% come out almost unanimous. And there's only 10% of the bills that come out on a party line vote. So I think that's some good news that you can take home. One of the first days in Olympia, I went into the Democrat caucus and introduced myself, and they said, what's one of your goals? And I said, well, I want to hug a Democrat every day, right? And that just was kind of my way of breaking the ice, and they really appreciated that. And throughout the course of my time in Olympia, they've mentioned that and how much that meant to them. One example of that is I was just able to pass House Bill 2464 last session, which reduced the cost of prescription drugs, and it went through both the House and the Senate unanimously.
Thank you. And wouldn't we all like to be able to hug people? It's been months. Next question, Emmett Smith is first. If elected, what, if any, climate change legislation would you be supporting or introducing? What are the biggest issues, and how do you see us dealing with them and achieving your goals?
I have spent 20-some years in the oil and gas industry, and I know quite a bit about the carbon-based energy. And over the years, I have learned that the big issue for us is going to be the reduction in carbon emissions. I don't think biofuels and other things will keep up and give us any options at all at this time. But I think this very strongly. I think that we should adopt, and I will support, a carbon-free environment by 2050. And I would be very adamant about the need to turn America's science towards achieving this goal. Now, I have worked with many different companies with a lot of engineering and scientific and geological people, and I know that you only get the results that you expect. And in this area, I would want to aim very high in reducing carbon emissions and stand for a 100% reduction by 2050. It's a big jump, I know that, but I think it's an important jump for us all to make and to do for the whole society and the culture.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
All right, thank you. So the good news here, you may not know this, but we're actually by far #1 in producing clean energy in the United States of America. We're by far #1. We're already on the, if this was a sports competition, we would be the Super Bowl champs. Whenever we talk about this though, we still have work that we can do. And you know, a couple of the bigger items that are up for debate right now are, do we pursue a low carbon fuel standard, a gas tax? Do we pursue forest management? Do we pursue methane recovery? And I'll submit to you that we need to submit those areas that will give us the biggest bang for the buck. And I'm telling you, by about 100-to-1 ratio, proper forest management to prevent wildfires and methane recovery, such as done in the Seattle dump, is by far the most bang for our buck. All the policies that I'll submit, that I will adhere to concerning climate is, it's got to be local, it's got to be sustainable, and it's got to be market-based.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. So climate change is a very real and serious threat that we need to address urgently. I've been endorsed by the Washington Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club of Washington because I recognize that there's more work that needs to be done to reduce carbon pollution, especially in reducing the impact on our transportation systems. We want a just transition away from fossil fuels by offering training and retraining of the workers in those areas in the carbon intensive areas. We need to make sure that they have, that if jobs are lost there, that we are going to replace those jobs and focus on retraining those individuals.
Thank you. Okay, back to now. We're 5 months into it and for the next crisis, which could be another pandemic, earthquake, volcanic eruption, tsunami, landslide. We have lots of possibilities, unfortunately. What is the role of the state in preparedness, and what will your role be? Chris Gildon is first.
I think the first thing we need to do is a complete audit of agency preparedness. We were completely caught off guard in a number of areas during this particular pandemic, the most of which you see is the Employment Security Department, where we knew that unemployment claims were going to be rising exponentially because of we were shut down. Nobody was working. They fell behind quickly, and they're still behind. They're trying to dig their way out right now, but people are hurting. I'm dealing every day with people who have not received a paycheck in 10, 11, 12, 14 weeks. People are hurting out there. So we need to make sure that our agencies are properly staffed and resourced in order to effectively perform the mission that they have been given. Another agency is the health department. You know, we had a huge difficulty getting PPE to the places to where it was most needed. Part of this is, you know, we have to ensure the proper allocation of scarce resources for maximum effect. And this has to do with, we knew that the long-term care facilities were the epicenter of this particular virus, but it took us about 8 weeks or so to get them proper guidance and proper amounts of PPE. So I think we need to look at all of the agency preparedness. In the military, we call this off-the-shelf training, right? Like you have your plan and it's on the shelf, and whenever an event comes up, you can pull it off the shelf. We need to look at our off-the-shelf planning agency by agency in a coordinated effort in order to be better prepared.
Thank you. Julie Dorr?
So the first thing that happened here was definitely the PPE shortage. Spent the first days of the COVID pandemic working with staff and declaring this state of emergency here for Puyallup. Spent quite a bit of time with Congressman Heck's office and advocating for PPE for our frontline workers. I think that we need to make sure that our emergency preparedness programs are well funded. Definitely, I would support any types of audits or improvements of that. But they would need to be well staffed and well funded and have good resources. We definitely saw, well, there's a lot of learning lessons from this time. We need to make sure that we take those into account and move those to issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Emmett Smith?
I think it's been covered pretty well. There's a few things that I'd like to add to it. First of all, we have to make very clear what the relationship between the state government and the federal government is going to be, who is going to lead and who is going to follow. I think this is very important. The next thing, of course, we talked about here a little bit about the unemployment, also having equipment available, having a public health system that is properly staffed. And I think there has to be something else here, something called, that I will call, education of the public. Washington is not so bad, but what I mean by education is you don't have a constitutional right to run around without a mask if your government tells you that you need to wear one. This government is based on Rousseau's The Social Contract, which means the end is individual liberty, the means is complete obedience to the law. When the government lays down that law that is reasoned, you have to obey that law. We need to know what those laws are. We need to know from the government what we have to do as individuals in our communities. How long do we have to be able to hold out until authorities will get to us? I'm set up for 30 days to 90 days, but I think generally people set up for 5 days. There needs to be also a local.
Sorry. You are first for the next question, which is still on the crisis.
Okay.
Our numbers were going down and now they are going up, and many of the new cases seem to be among people who overdid the lack of social distancing. But of those affected earlier especially, a disproportionate number are Black and Latino residents in service jobs, so they had to keep working, and among farm laborers who tend not to live in the best conditions, are often not documented, and don't have insurance. How would you help them? Emmett Smith is first.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to say that the state of Washington was very lucky to have a governor who properly got the experts in front of us so that we could learn what we had to do to survive. Some of the things that we can do to help people, it has become abundantly clear of the inequality that we have in our society. And one thing that COVID-19 has taught us is we have a tremendous amount of inequality in access to, number one, better health care, access to better jobs, and also access to more community activities so they can understand what is going on. One of the very main things is that people understand that when the government is going to give you orders or laws or rules, that you must abide by them so that all of us can sacrifice so we can get through this thing together. I would immediately make sure that all of these people in the lower incomes have adequate food and shelter. I would make sure they have adequate health care, and I would make sure that they have adequate opportunity to tell us what it is that they need in their community. I'm also very much for local communities, like places like in the South Hill, banding together and being ready to know and how to work together during a crisis. I know I lived in one community where we knew where all of the generators were in the community, in the homeowners association. We knew how to put together the generators, how to get food out to people who was in need. We knew who the elderly were. We knew who the people who had lower income were. We knew right away what we would do if something arose. And that's what I would do to help these people acknowledge the inequality and try to move towards making it a more equal distribution of funds and opportunities.
Thank you. Chris Gildem.
Yeah, the data doesn't lie. Minorities have been disproportionately affected by this particular pandemic. You know, and one thing that I'll say is the legislature, whenever you ask, what am I going to do? Well, I want to support the executive to make sure that he is properly resourced in order to effectively deal with these problems. I think that's the job of the legislature. And sometimes we forget that, is the legislature is not the executive branch. My job is to resource the executive to make sure that they can do their particular job. And I think that's the biggest thing that I really want to do, is to make sure that that we have the resources, the logistics, the money in order to properly execute policy as dictated by the executive.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. So yes, I think it's absolutely true, and the data shows that Black and brown people have been disproportionately affected by this. That's a very big, broad issue that goes, you know, that's a whole nother topic, and I'm sure there'll be questions on that one. We need to make sure that we are, you know, that we're promoting living wage jobs, that we're focusing on workers' protections, and that we are giving them adequate access to health care. We need to address systemic racism, and it runs deep, and we have a long ways to go to address those inequalities. It affects, systemic racism affects people, Black and brown people's access to healthcare, housing, competitive wages. These are all things that we need to address as leaders, wherever we are, local level, state level. We need to address those things, and so that it's not disproportionately affecting Black and brown people. Thank you.
Thank you. And leading beautifully to my next question, which is racial justice. The videos of police brutality against people of color has ignited passion and greatly increased awareness of inequities. What can the state do to rid us of systemic and institutional racism and increase our racial justice? What should the state do? What will you do? And an audience member wanted to know specifically about in our community, so you can deal with it on the state or the community. And Chris Gildem is first.
Okay, no, that's a great question, and it has been a highlight in the news for some time now. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of distrust in our society these days that we've got to get beyond. And a lot of that is caused by some bad actors, quite honestly. You know, I think we've come a long way in America, but we've got a long way left to go before we have full equality and full equity amongst everyone. I think, you know, on a policy level, I think it's very appropriate to review policy and training and hiring practices within different law enforcement type agencies. But I also think we need to remember that these law enforcement officers are our neighbors as well. They're not here to cause divisiveness. There have been some bad actors, and I would hope that the law enforcement agency, as a professional organization, would police itself well. And should they fail to do that, and I think that in some cases they may have, then it is up to the legislature to step in and say, no, enough's enough. This is not the way that we behave. If you're not going to police yourself, we're going to police yourself for you. Because, you know, we are all God's children. We are all made in his image. And I think it would do us well to remember that that song from Sunday school that, you know, Jesus loves all the children of the world, not just some. He loves us all. And that's what's in my heart. And I hope that's what's in yours as well.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. So I will tell you that I've spent a lot of time educating myself. There are things that I thought I knew that I don't. We have a long ways to go to address these issues. And anybody that knows me knows that I have been a very strong law enforcement advocate. And the first thing that I did was in this area is I went to our chief. And I said, Chief, Chief, I need to understand, what are we doing here? Have we reviewed our policies? He has put our policies online. He's addressed the questions. I went to our city manager and I said, I need you to be looking at our hiring policies, at our job descriptions. Where are we looking and recruiting for people? And for government to work for everybody, the government needs to look like the individuals that it represents. We need Black and brown people. We need younger people. We need LGBTQ people. We need to make sure that we are it's a citizens government. It needs to be the people that are in here, that live here, need to be represented. And so those are the things I've done and I would continue to do.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
First, I'd like to say that I think Julie Dorr has just raised an issue that's very important, and that's about educating yourself. Because I set out about 4 or 5 months ago just to figure out what it is that we have on a national and a local level. And I have been quite shocked to come down and realize that I am dealing with groups of people whose main interest in life is destroying immigration, watching race, and keeping their eye on how this culture remains pure. And I'm almost astounded by what I found, because I just don't hang around with people like this. And I would say to anyone that I will do whatever it takes to see to it that they are ineffective in government or any other way.
Thank you.
And then I will move on to say that I think, oh, am I out of time again?
No, you're not.
Okay, then I would say there are some things that we can do. I am not I'm not for defunding the police, but I think you need to take a good look at the history of how the police have been used in the past, even in the rise of labor unions. And I think we have to talk a lot about the militarization of our police force, and people that show up in federal costumes that are something straight out of a movie right now is very unsettling to me. I think all of that needs to stop. And we need to get a handle on what our law enforcement is doing, because they are the center of our community.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to get 2 more questions in, and there's a bunch more, and audience questions are coming in too. But I want to stay in the same sort of topic for this one, and Julie Dorr will be first. What changes do you think we need to make in our criminal justice system to change what many think of as racist sentencing guidelines? Such changes could include encouraging rehabilitation over punishment, mental health treatment if needed, and expanding programs to treat, educate, give job training, use work release programs, etc. Julie Dorr.
So some of the work that I've done on this was, we had a pilot program in Puyallup to bring social workers as a resource in with our police department. So if they were if there was a call that it was better served from a mental health perspective or a resource, we had a social worker that would go out and work with the individual. We've piloted a community court program here. Instead of people automatically ending up in jail, it's modeled after drug court. We got a $200,000 grant for this, and I'm highly supportive of that program. I've been out there to watch it. I went out and watched the drug court program. And I think that there are things like that that we can be doing to address the issues rather than the incarceration. Providing those resources before, providing the resources that they need to prevent the long criminal history. Those are and all of these things tie in together. Affordable housing. Well, if you have a conviction, then you have a hard time getting housed. We need to be taking steps to help people get the help they need and not have these long-term criminal records. I don't want to say, not that everybody does. I definitely support that, if there's mental health and retraining programs and things that we can do while they're incarcerated, then we should do that. We have to start breaking some of these cycles.
Thank you. Chris Gildon.
Whenever I was in the military, my first deployment to Iraq in 2003, I was a company commander for we were the guys out on the road patrolling, looking for the IEDs. We quickly realized that was kind of a tough job to do. So a much better thing to do than to drive and find the IED or wait until they blew up on us was to get to the left of boom, right? Get to the events and actions before the IED is actually built and in place. I think a lot of what we're talking about here is the same thing. How can we get to the left of incarceration? And I think it starts with better education. It starts with better mental health care, better opportunities. And it includes everyone from the courts, the schools, the police, all working in conjunction to make those opportunities better.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
I think, first of all, that I had the occasion to live through the great moment in Washington when everybody was pushing for 3 strikes, you're out. And I think we can see where that has led us trying to put everybody into jail. It simply doesn't work. So the issue here, as everyone has said tonight, is proper education, mental health, a focus on integration, proper nutrition, proper opportunities in life for the people, the vast majority of people who are just trying to find some place to be part of, some place to that they can join up with and be part of our culture, be something, a part of something that's larger than themselves and something that makes them feel like they're a worthwhile citizen.
Thank you. This will be the last question, and Chris Gildon will answer it first. Earlier on, transportation and transportation problems were mentioned. The passage of I-976 last year greatly affected transportation infrastructure budget for the state. What infrastructure projects will you support, and how do we pay for them? And an audience question was, if we can't fund our roads with car tabs, how about making all highways toll roads? So, Chris Gildon.
Okay, wow, I'm glad I get 2 minutes to answer that one. So transportation, the good news is the transportation budget is a very bipartisan budget in Olympia. And I've got to give a lot of credit to the committee chair, Representative Jake Pye, who is a Democrat, as well as the ranking member, Andrew Barkus, who's a Republican. This is a good budget almost always because of the leadership of those 2 individuals. It's about a $10.4 billion budget. And we were very proactive this last year because we created the budget with anticipation that $30 car tabs were going to pass. We made that assumption and we created the budget accordingly. And so I think that was, that was proactive and that was very good. We've got a number of projects here in the area that are really going to help. We've got the extension of Canyon Road going, with the new bridge over 70th Street, the extension of 167 out to the Port of Tacoma. Right now, we've got the bridge over Main Street between Puyallup and Sumner in progress. It's very good. Talk about the toll roads. So gas tax, regressive. I've only got a few seconds left, so I'm going to be very brief. I've supported a proposal that would take us off of a reliance on the gas tax and put us on something that is sustainable. It's based on inflation, and that is the state share of the 6.5% tax on the existing tax of car sales. There's a clear nexus between the sale of a motor vehicle and transportation construction. This can be done over the course of 10 years so that we adjust and we make changes as necessary and the situation dictates. And this is a funding source that is stable and it is sufficient enough to provide for all of our transportation needs.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
The type of transportation that I would favor is a great deal of emphasis on bus, light rail, heavy rail, and subway. I would try to get as many vehicles off the road as possible. As for where the money would come from, we'd have to use the regular tax structure. And again, it's an issue of how are you going to get all of this funded, given that there's so much pressure on sales taxes that are raised and also on fees and licensing. I think we have to look at alternative methods of tax in the state, whatever that might be. It also ties into the issue of greater housing density so that we can make the systems pay. Currently, we cannot make the bus systems pay out on the South Hill, nor will people use a system that comes only once every hour. It simply isn't efficient enough for people to move. So we have to increase the density to get the people there so that they can use the transportation.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. So we clearly heard the voters on 9976 and the $30 car tabs. We need to listen to that. We have transportation needs in this district, and we will need, it's going to involve a big discussion on how we're going to fund that. The people that are funding it, though, as Emmett is saying, out in the southern part of this district, they don't have access to these improvements. We will need to make sure that the ST3 projects are considered carefully. We are finally seeing the realization of the ST2 parking garage here in Puyallup, but yeah, we just need to make sure that those paying into the system reap the benefits, and we're going to have to get creative because the voters have spoken on the car tabs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now it's time for closing statements. Each candidate has up to 1 minute. We reverse the order of opening statements and so begin with Chris Gildon.
All right, I'd like to say thank you once again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this particular forum. I think it has been informative for all involved. You know, I want you to know that I've worked really hard to represent you over the last couple of years, not just some of you, but all of you. I really appreciate everyone who's reached out to me for a meeting. I've enjoyed hearing from you, and I hope that if you have an issue of state level concern, please bring it to me because I do want to hear from you. I want to hear from all of you, all perspectives. It only makes me a better legislator. I want you to know that I'll always listen, I'll always care, I'll always be here for you. It's been an honor serving you, and I do hope to continue that service in the Senate. Again, I am endorsed by the Tacoma News Tribune. I'm endorsed by Bruce Dammeier. I'm endorsed by every previous senator for the last 15 years in this seat. And that's Republican and Democrat alike. And it's just been a pleasure serving you. I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Dorr.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much for hosting this forum. I love this community. This is my home. I will work hard to protect the health and safety of this community as I always have. I am honored to be endorsed by organizations such as the Washington Nurse Association, Washington Education Association, over 20 firefighter locals, first responders, 36 labor unions, as well as elected officials from across the state. I have the endorsement of Attorney General Bob Ferguson, Senator Patty Murray, Congressman Denny Heck, Kilmer, and Smith. I have the endorsement of Senate Majority Leader Billig and the Speaker of the House, Jenkins. I have over 50 organizations and hundreds of community members that have shown their support for this campaign and the direction we are going. And I want you to know that I will continue to operate in the same way that I always do. I am here, my door, I hate to use that word, my door is open, and I look forward to representing you. Thank you.
Thank you. Emmett Smith.
Well, I would like everyone to know that I'm very thankful for having me tonight, listening to me. It's always great when some people want to hear what you have to say. There's a couple of things I want you to know about me. After I became a lawyer, I went to school at night and became a certified teacher in this area, and I've taught in many of these schools in the area. And I learned a great deal about the community by being a teacher. I learned that in some schools, as many as half of the children are not living in their homes with their parents. And I learned what it's like to walk into a classroom and see 21 first and second graders speaking 17 different languages and no one speaking English. I learned a lot about them, and one day I told a friend of mine that I have become a better lawyer by being with these people day in and day out. I very much enjoy the people that I've met here, the people that I've worked with in the school districts, and the people I've worked with through my law practice to help them through the bankruptcies, the times of great financial crisis. I've seen many things that I thought I could never believe would happen in this country, that I've seen working in the bankruptcy courts, and it's been a real learning experience to be part of this culture. And I want to thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you all so much for being here. It's been fun for me and very interesting. These candidates are running for state senate from the 25th district. They are Chris Gildon, Julie Dorr, and Emmett Smith. Please vote for your choice in the primary election by August 4th. You should have your ballot by now. If you're mailing it rather than putting it in a drop box, please mail it early. I would also like to thank the timekeeper, Terry Baker, and the Voter Service Committee from the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. And huge thanks to our community co-sponsors, the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, AAUW, Centro Latino, Eastside Neighborhood Advisory Council of Tacoma, the NAACP, St. Leo's Church, the Summit Waller Community Association, Tacoma South End Neighborhood Council, Tacoma Urban League, University of Washington School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, and the YWCA of Pierce County. Please, audience, watch for other forums, read your voters pamphlet, look up vote411.org, where you can find answers to questions posed to all candidates running for office. Read candidates' websites, watch forums, and do all that you can to be an educated voter. And having done all that, don't forget to vote. Thank you, viewers, and thank you, candidates.